Content warning for profanity, gunfire, and violence. Hello and welcome to Discount Storytime, literature's finest dumpster fire. And friends, do I have a treat for you today. Discount Storytime has doubled, that's right, doubled its staff, and I am proud to announce this week's story will be read by our new resident voice actor, Grande. And I know you're going to enjoy his reading of our story, Agent Muffet. Enjoy!
You are probably familiar with the classic nursery rhyme Little Miss Muffet. Until recently, everyone assumed Miss Muffet ran from the spider like a sniveling coward, and that was the end. But our team of literature hunters discovered the entirety of Miss Muffet's story in a remote mountain cabin. And you, dear listener, get to hear the full story. Enjoy! Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet, eating her curds and whey. There came a big spider and sat down beside her and frightened Miss Muffet away to a nearby brush, where she met with the other law enforcement agents. Her captain, Jack Nimble, smiled. "Good job, Agent Muffet. By the book. Just like I did it when I was in the field. Before... Captain Nimble looked down at his burned toe that had almost took him off the force. Curse that candle. Agent Francesca, or Frankie Muffet, whispered into her walkie-talkie. "Listen up. The spider is in position. For the drug possession charges to stick, we have to wait until he takes hold of the curds and whey." Curds and whey was the street name for a dangerous narcotic ravaging the city. The spider, a.k.a. Alfonso the Spider Spiderelli, was a notorious drug trafficker. He didn't give a damn who got poisoned with curds and whey, so long as he made his money, and lived in his expensive mansion. With Agent Muffet at the helm, this sting operation took damn near a year to put together. Frankie had put everything into this. Hell, she damn near sacrificed her marriage, but her husband, H.D., stood by her, both literally and figuratively. She scanned the trees to see if she could find him tucked away in his sniper's perch. But of course, she didn't see him. H.D. was too good. But he was there. She knew it. She could feel him. And that gave Frankie some relief. Oh no, she thought, realizing that there was someone she couldn't see, that overeager, loudmouth rookie. He had a good heart and meant well, but had to be kept on a short leash. Frankie whispered over her walkie-talkie. "Where's the rookie, Thumpkin? Where is Thumpkin?" Out from the woods came a battle cry. "Here I am! Here I am!" Meanwhile, Spider picked up the curds and whey and rubbed some on his gums. This was the good stuff. Pure. Then he heard Agent Thumpkin yelling. Spider yelled back, "Who the fuck is there?" "You're under arrest, scumbag!" shouted Agent Thumpkin and dashed out of the woods, gun in hand, straight at Spider. Spider was a drug kingpin for a reason and didn't miss a beat. Instantly, his 6 spider arms reached out with 6 shooters blazing. That's 36 shooters. Thumpkin collapsed as blood sprayed out of his left leg. Spider fired wildly, then tried to run, but as soon as he turned around, taser prongs hit him and he fell. His 6 spider legs kicked and then went limp. "Damn it!" said Frankie as all hell broke loose. "Fuck, fuck, fuck!" yelled Captain Nimble. He wasn't looking at Spider. No, he was looking the other way. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Frankie heard over the radio, "Agent Dumpty is down. I repeat, Agent Dumpty is down. We need medics." "Humpty, no!" Frankie swore and ran to her shattered husband. A stray bullet knocked elite sniper Humpty Dumpty off his sniper's perch, and he had a great fall. All the king's men worked to stabilize him. Then they heard it. Neighing. "Damn it, not again!" shouted a paramedic. Out of nowhere, all the king's horses galloped onto the scene. The paramedic waved his arms. Get back! We got this! We don't need all the king's horses! You're horses, not medics! But all the king's horses didn't listen. They cantered forward and did what horses did best: trample the helpless. All the king's men finally chased off all the king's horses, but Humpty was in an awful shape and taking shallow, ragged breaths. From his broken body bloomed broken yolk. A medic put a hand on Muffet's shoulder.
I'm sorry, Frankie. Humpty can't be saved.
Frankie wiped away her tears and whispered to her husband, Not saved, but you can be avenged. Six months later, crowds packed the courtroom for Alfonso the Spider Spiderelli's trial. He had hired the best defense team from the law firm of John Jacob Jingleheimer and Smith. But it wasn't looking good. Everyone rose as the judge and jury entered. Then, to the surprise of all, the prosecutor addressed the court. Your Honor and members of the jury, as much as it pains me to say this, we are dropping our case against the Spider. The judge looked over her reading glasses. Counsel, did I hear you correctly? Why are you dropping this case? Spider looked at his attorneys, and from their dropped jaws, they were just as surprised as everyone else. For lack of evidence, Your Honor. This morning, the Curzon way in evidence, it... Spit it out, counsel, said the judge. It's apparently just common porridge. And with no evidence of drug possession, Spider was released. The prosecutor saw the big grin on Spider's face. Of course, he would be happy. But he also saw a smirk on an unexpected face. Agent Frankie Muffet. Just outside the courthouse, the prosecutor caught up with Agent Muffet. You must be really upset. I am sorry I couldn't convict Spider for killing Humpty. Without the drug possession charge, all the other charges would be chalked up to self-defense. Frankie looked at the prosecutor through dark sunglasses. You did all you could. He asked, So, what do you think happened to the Curzon way? Why would someone switch it out with porridge? Why would anyone tamper with such important evidence to get a scumbag like Spider off? You got me, Frankie said through a poker face. The reason I'm asking, Agent Muffet, is I reviewed the evidence locker sign-in logs. You were the last person inside the evidence locker. Strange, huh? Frankie turned to leave. I had nothing to do with the evidence locker. I've been busy. The prosecutor asked, Busy with what? As Frankie walked away, she said, I've taken up hunting. Muffet cashed out her retirement and, along with Humpty's life insurance, was able to stay afloat without returning to the force after bereavement leave. Besides, that wasn't her anymore. The by-the-book, follow-the-rules Agent Muffet was gone. Now, she was just plain old Frankie. And Frankie was a busy girl. She trained daily in cardiovascular, weights, marksmanship, and close combat, all before most people left for work in the morning. She spent most of her time studying Spider. He was careful not to have an online or social media footprint and kept his personal information locked down tight. However, in the real world, Spider made one enormous mistake with his routine. He had one. And predictability means vulnerability. Spider was busy constructing a new building for his operation, a tall eyesore near Mulberry Terrace. He left the house at the same time each morning, took the same routes, and used the same bodyguards. And the bodyguards also had predictable routines. It was almost too easy. The one sticking point was the Spider's family. No spouse or partner, but he had an infant son. and Spider hired an elderly live-in nanny for when he was at work. Sure, there were a few guards at the mansion, but they, like him, were predictable. Same coffee and lunch breaks every day, sometimes leaving the mansion unguarded for up to 5 minutes. The boss would not have been happy to know that. One day, the guard stepped away for a minute to get coffee, and that was all the time Frankie needed. Spider was called back to his house by a panicked guard and nanny. As he stormed into the foyer, they were pale-faced and pacing. Spider snarled angrily. "What the fuck is going on? Why'd you call me in a panic?" The nanny, an elderly woman with kind, tear-soaked eyes, handed Spider a note.
I found this in the baby's crib, sir.
Spider snapped up the note and read,
I have your son. If you want to see him before he dies, be on the roof of your new building at midnight. Come alone, or he dies sooner.
Spider softly asked the nanny, "Why want you watching him?" The elderly nanny wrung her gnarled hands and said,
I'm sorry. He was asleep.
"It's okay. I understand." Spider reassured her with a warm smile. The nanny sighed.
Thank you, sir. You're so kind.
Spider looked at the guard next, who shook with wet pants. "I'll take this as your formal resignation." Spider reread the note, tore it up, and screamed. That night, Frankie stood on the rooftop and waited. She had spray painted an egg on the front of her black bulletproof vest, but the white paint had dripped down and the egg looked like a white skull. She held a green and yellow baby basket at her side. Frankie tried not to look down. She wasn't afraid of heights, but neither was Humpty, and we know how that turned out. She gripped the basket tighter. A loud voice split the quiet. "Give him back!" Spider stood on the roof, not more than 10 feet away, and shook with rage. "Now!" "Tut tut," said Frankie, and wagged her finger. "I told you to come alone." Spider looked around. "I did, idiot. Just see anyone else?" Frankie pulled out a small electronic box with 2 switches. "Let's see." She flipped one switch, and the rooftops of surrounding buildings sparked, and snipers screamed. "Don't worry, they're not dead, just unconscious. I shocked them only enough to keep them from disrupting our business. Besides, you wouldn't want a stray bullet to," she lifted the basket, "accidentally hit someone, now, would you?" Inside the baby basket, the baby spider cooed from under a blanket. Spider took a step forward, and Frankie lifted the basket over the ledge. "Not another step," she said. Spider backed up, and Frankie pulled the basket back. His voice dripped with malice. "When this is over, and he's safe with me, I will skin you alive." Frankie snarled. "You took everything from me. Humpty and I were going to start a family. He would have been a wonderful father, but now—" Sensing a weak spot, Spider's eyes narrowed, and his face contorted into a cruel grin. "Hey, he was an occupational hazard. You know what they say. If you want to make an omelet." Frankie's eyes darkened, but just for a moment. Spider chuckled. "He died painfully, didn't he? Getting stomped by all those horses? What a humiliating way to go." Frankie's arm shook just slightly. She couldn't afford to lose her wits. Not now. She took a deep breath. "Yes, it was horrible. Almost as bad as being thrown off a building as a baby because of your father's mouth." Spider took a step. "Okay, cut the bullshit. What do you want? Money? Power? Everybody has a price." Frankie smiled. "I want you to choose. You or your baby. You took a life, so now give a life. You or your baby." The spider assessed the situation. "You're bluffing. You're a cop. Cops don't do that kind of sick shit." Frankie again held the basket over the ledge. "I was a cop. No more.
That part of me is dead. And speaking of dead, last chance, you or your baby.
Spider smiled, but his brow was damp with spider sweat. I don't think you'll do it. Go ahead. Do it, coward. I dare ya. Frankie stared at Spider. He had been inching in and was getting dangerously close. She was good at combat, but not one-handed with her back to a 100-foot drop. From under the blanket, the baby spider cooed again.
Okay, you've made your choice.
Frankie hurled the basket over the ledge and ducked. No! Screamed Spider and jumped over Frankie and caught the basket. He fell faster and faster. Spider saw something beneath him and shot out webs, making a parachute to slow the fall while twisting his body towards the target on the ground. Within seconds, he landed on a mulberry bush. He was scratched up with a fractured exoskeleton, but still alive. Ah! Yidget! We're fine, you sicko! Frankie waved at him.
Yep, congratulations.
Triumphant, Spider reached into the basket and pulled off the blanket to find a speaker? From it came his baby's coos. What the fuck? He looked around. The mulberry bush was loaded with dolls? Little clay figures with 4 legs, long bodies, and long necks. He picked up one of these clay things. It looked like weasels? Why? He held one up to ask Frankie, What the fuck are these things? Then he saw it. The weasel wasn't clay, it was putty, and pressed into its back was a blinking blasting device. These were explosives. Spider, now panicked, tried climbing out of the mulberry bush, but his fractured exoskeleton kept him pinned. He looked at Frankie, who held up a small electronics box with 2 switches. No! 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 Frankie stared down for a long while and sighed. Moving quickly, she unclipped a safety cable from the harness under her ballistic vest. She hurried to a dark corner of the top floor. Baby Spider slept inside a green and yellow basket next to a microphone. She picked him up and hurried out of the building. They had to make one more stop that night. The doorbell rang, and Ronald Thumpkin, now retired from the force after his leg injury, hobbled to the door. Nobody was there. He looked down and saw a green and yellow baby basket, complete with a smiling baby spider. Roland picked up the baby, and a note fell out with a small key taped to it.
He is your new resident, and don't worry about expenses. This key goes to a train station locker with enough funds to last a very long time. I know I can trust you with this, Roland, because you are a good and honest man. Take care. F.
Bewildered, Roland took the baby spider inside and closed the door. The door sign read, Itsy Bitsy Orphanage. In the shadows, a figure with a skull-painted vest slipped into the night. She had sold everything, and the proceeds sat in a train station locker. She was no longer a wife. She was no longer a government agent. But she still had a job to do. Some may call it vengeance. This is not vengeance. Revenge is not a valid motive. It's an emotional response. No, not vengeance. Reprimanding. Look out, villainous evildoers, for here comes the reprimander.
A discount story time, discount idea. If the headless horseman is chasing you, don't panic. Pull out a bag of pumpkin seeds and start eating them. He will realize who is in charge. Thank you for listening. Next week's story is to be determined, and for a great reason, because there are multiple stories to pick from. So subscribe and find out what we dredge out of the literary muck for your listening pleasure. And until next week, be sure to play nice with others, be super duper kind to yourself, and as always, remember to laugh. Agent Muffet was performed by Grande and written by me, Coffee McCann. Contact information is available in the show notes and at discountstorytime.com. Hello, awesome listeners. I've moved the show off Patreon and will not be putting content behind paywalls. I think everyone deserves access to this half-assed content. Having said that, if you're enjoying Discount Storytime, please help keep the show running if you can. There's a support link in the show notes where you can contribute a few dollars each month and you can cancel anytime. Another way to support Discount Storytime is through word of mouth. By telling others about the show, you are both helping the show and spreading smiles. Now that's a win-win-win if you ask me. And regardless, thank you so much for being a listener. Bye.